The tray shook first, glasses chiming like a countdown. Then Michael's gloves, knocking together as he smiled at the waitress who dared to speak in his ring. Elizabeth Chavez didn't move. She held a rattling tray, protein shakes, oats, 2 glasses of orange juice, parked just outside the ropes. A few students snickered. Michael grinned wider. "Come on. You said my demo was off. Step in and show the class." Phones angled up from the corners of the mat. A couple of beginners looked thrilled. A couple looked anywhere but at her. This was normal here. Michael's voice, Michael's spotlight, Michael's gym. The woman with the apron and the name tag wasn't part of the show. Until she was. Apex Combat Gym pulsed under strip lights and an LED banner promising discipline, dominance, results. The ropes were bright and new. The floor smelled like disinfectant and sweat and sponsorships. Everything gleamed enough to be content-ready the second Michael started shouting. Michael lived for that lens. 35, shredded, charming when it paid, cruel when it played. His feed was a highlight reel of pad-smashing power and speeches about alpha standards, tagged by local tech founders and weekend warriors who bought private sessions the way other people bought sports cars. Elizabeth lived for schedules, clock out from the diner, clock in at the cafe window, blend, wipe, restock, deliver. She timed her steps to avoid sparring rounds, slid past cameras, learned the ring without touching it. She never wore gloves. She never corrected anyone. She watched. Before we continue, click subscribe, like this video, and tell me in the comments where you're watching from. Your support helps us bring more captivating stories, and trust me, you won't want to miss them. Today, during a rear hand counter drill, Michael had barked at a kid to keep his chin high and hands wide to breathe. The kid nodded. Elizabeth, passing with a tray, couldn't help it. The words slipped out soft as steam. Chin tucked, elbows in, or he'll get clipped. Michael's head snapped up like he'd heard a bell. Now the whole room waited to see him win this round too. Elizabeth set the tray on the timekeeper's table and met his smile with nothing. Not anger, not fear, just a stillness that made a couple of the old-timers in the back straighten. Coach Delgado, arms folded, watched her feet, not her face. He'd seen balance like that before. People think silence means surrender. Sometimes it's just recoil. "Tell you what," Michael said, pitching his voice for the cameras. 2 minutes of light work. You survive, you get to correct me anytime you want. Laughter. A few oohs. Someone whispered, "She's gonna get folded." Elizabeth blinked once. "You done?" "Soon as you step in," he said. Elizabeth unknotted her apron and folded it like it mattered. The room quieted at the care she took. The way she set it down flat. The way her shoulders stayed level. Delgado exhaled through his nose. She touched the top rope, not to enter, not yet, just to feel the tension, and the canvas gave back a memory she'd packed away with the rest of her life. The ring wasn't new to her. She'd only promised never to return to it. Before Apex had LED banners and live streams, there was a small neighborhood gym, a brother who taught her patience before power, and a night that taught her why she swore off fighting at all. The rope's bite still tingled in Elizabeth's fingertips when she turned her key and stepped into the dark. The apartment breathed in soft hums, old fridge, streetlight, buzz through blinds, the distant roll of a bus. She didn't turn on the overhead. She crossed the room by memory, shoes off, apron folded on the back of the chair, the same careful way she'd folded it at the gym. Control the little things when the big things try to take you. On the bedroom carpet, she sank to her knees and reached under the bed until cardboard found her palm. The shoebox scraped forward with a sound like a throat clearing. She set it on the quilt and lifted the lid. Tape, leather, paper that smelled like cinnamon and dust. Her Muay Thai hand wraps lay on top. Sun faded where the blue had been rich once, soft where they used to rasp. Beneath them, a creased photo. Diego Chavez, 22, grinning with a chipped tooth and an arm slung around her shoulders. In the picture, she was 15, too serious for a party. Already squared to the camera like she expected a punch from it. "Chin tucked, Liz," Photo Diego would have teased, tapping under her jaw. "No free targets." She touched the picture, and the years folded back. Basement air, damp and metallic. The old Chavez boxing and Muay Thai gym had been a rectangle of concrete and heart. No LED banners, no influencer ring lights, just a radio that never stayed on one station, and a fan that clicked like a metronome for suffering. The bag line swung lazy arcs. On the wall, Coach Delgado's handwriting crawled across poster board. "Balance is louder than force." "Art of silence in motion," Diego would say, wrapping her hands slower than she liked. "See it, breathe it, take the space, leave the noise." He'd tap the heel of her palm. "What's first?" "Stillness," she'd answer. "What's next?" "Angle." "And last?" "Accuracy." He'd grin. "Good. Silence, angle, accuracy. The rest is decoration." They trained until her calves burned glass. Diego's kicks cracked the bag like old thunder. He never rushed her. If she flinched at a feint, he'd make her stand and breathe, count 4 in, 4 out, until the room sharpened. When she learned to pivot, a true pivot, heel and hip in a clean hinge, he whooped so loud the women lifting on the far side laughed at them both. At 17, she was a state champion with a nickname the local papers tried on and failed to make stick. Reporters wanted Lightning Liz. The old men at the gym called her Quiet. She liked theirs. The last year before it all ended, Diego fought too much because bills came too fast. Their mother's hours at the laundromat had been cut. Late fees grew teeth. Elizabeth knew pieces. An envelope by the microwave, a number circled twice. Diego's smile stretched thin. But she didn't know about the men with bad watches until one waited outside the gym in a suit that didn't fit his shoulders. "You're talented," he told Diego, eyes never leaving Elizabeth. "Talent deserves bigger venues." Delgado had stepped between them with a rag still in his hand, the universal sign of work. "No bigger venues," he said. "Only sanctioned fights." The man's teeth showed without warmth. "Sanctioned doesn't pay enough." She sat back on her heels now and wound one wrap around her hand. Once, twice. She stopped and exhaled. What was the point of dressing old ghosts? Because memory is how you keep promise, she told herself. Because tomorrow, Michael will press again. She pulled another photo from the box, the last they took before the night. Diego's cheekbone was already shadowed yellow from a pre-fight clash of heads, but he made the bruise look like style. He was smiling because she'd landed an elbow-in close the day before and not apologized for it. The night itself came in flashes. Her mind refused to stitch into a clean story. A warehouse that pretended to be a gym. Too much smoke. A ring that sat too high over concrete, like a bad altar. Bowed ropes. A man whose record didn't belong to his hands. Diego laughing it off. "I'll be fine. You know the rule. Don't fight angry. Fight accurate." She remembered the second round. Diego already breathing wrong, a gash over his brow that leaked into his eye. She remembered yelling for him to circle the other way. She remembered the elbow he didn't see. How quiet the crowd grew when the sound wasn't a cheer anymore. How the floor shook under her when she hit it running. They told her later his heart had an old weakness, that he shouldn't have been there, that the blow was bad luck. Elizabeth didn't believe in luck. She believed in choices. Hers afterward was a vow made to a hospital ceiling. No more fighting. Not for glory, not for money, not for anyone who wanted a clip for their paid. Delgado found her on the steps outside, knuckles raw from a wall that didn't deserve it. He didn't say, "I told you so." He put a hand on her shoulder and said, "I will stay. You will heal." He stayed. The gym did not. Rent rose, sponsors talked in circles, and when a buyer came through with a smile and a camera crew, Delgado looked at Elizabeth and asked a question with his eyebrows. She nodded. Let it go. They sold. The banner changed. The ring stayed. Apex had been a clean coat of paint over a eulogy. She took the wrap off, folded it into the box, and closed the lid gently. Her phone buzzed on the nightstand. She ignored it. It buzzed again, longer. She flipped it over. Delgado. You okay? Elizabeth stared at the screen, thumb hovering. She typed, erased, typed again. He'll get bored. 3 dots pulsed, stopped, came back. Delgado. He won't. He smelled something true today. Her lips twitched. He smelled his own fear. A beat. Delgado. You saw the footage? Her chest tightened. She opened the cafe group chat. A link sat there like a baited hook. Apex Live. When critics think they're fighters. The thumbnail was a freeze of her face near the ropes, tray in hand, the caption across the bottom. Stay in your lane, sweetheart. A part of her mind noted the timing, posted 15 minutes after she left. Fast. Efficient. Michael's specialty. She tapped the link. The clip was chopped and sweetened for humiliation. Michael's voice, her silence, the snickers from the corners. They cut her correction to a single word. Chin, like she'd been parroting him. They added a slow zoom on her name tag as if to underline a point about class. At the end, Michael looked into the camera and said, "We love our cafe team, but let the coaches coach," and winked like a gentleman. The comments stacked like bricks. Alpha Mike. Bro, she wanted clout so bad. Founder Tom. Hire me to train your staff. JFit. Put her in for 2 rounds. Content would slap. Heart of Glass. Kinda messed up, IDK. Rope drop. Nah, she gotta learn her place. For Elizabeth set the phone down and the room tilted, not from dizziness, but from the old sensation of stepping between ropes. Breath became a count. 4 in, 4 out. The batteries in the fridge hummed louder. Another buzz. A DM from a name she didn't recognize. He's live tomorrow. Says he'll settle the debate. Don't let him clown you again. She closed her eyes. The shoebox was a planet's gravity at her knees. Silence. Angle. Accuracy. Diego's order. Diego's voice. He had protected her from wolves with clean hands. She had promised to keep them clean in his name. Michael's wink flickered on the inside of her skull. Her phone lit again with a notification. Views surging. The clip had jumped to a bigger account. Someone had slowed the part where she touched the rope and looped it with a laugh track. She didn't cry. She wanted to. Instead, she slid the shoebox back beneath the bed with both hands, as if tucking in a child for a sleep that needed to be deep. Then she stood, every joint deciding with her. In the bathroom mirror, she pressed her knuckles to her reflection, gentle, the way Diego used to. "Don't fight angry," she whispered. "Fight accurate." The apartment filled with light from the phone's next glow. Another share, then another. The caption mutated as it leapt from page to page. When critics think they're fighters. When waitresses think they're coaches. When quiet forgets to stay quiet. By midnight, Michael's face grinned from 3 different reposts. By 1 a.m., the comments were a tide. By 2, the clip had a soundtrack and a hashtag. Elizabeth turned the phone face down and let the dark back in. Tomorrow would come. So would he. And if he wanted a show, she would decide the script. By morning, the clip had jumped from fitness pages to gossip pages to a sports meme account with 2 million followers. At Apex, the first class of the day watched it between rounds, laughing in small, guilty bursts whenever Elizabeth's name tag filled the screen. Michael Cooper arrived late, sunglasses on, smile sharpened. The sleep hadn't helped. His jaw ticked where he'd clenched it all night, answering DMs from sponsors who didn't like controversy unless they could sell it. Control the room, he told himself, stepping onto the mat. Make it content. Team, he boomed, clapping. We had a little misunderstanding yesterday. He swept an arm toward the cafe window where Elizabeth restocked protein bars with the same efficiency she'd used to reload a machine. We love our staff, but, hey, lanes exist for a reason. Chuckles from the regulars. Phones rose. Elizabeth didn't look up. He hated that. The ignoring. It ate him worse than heckling. In his world, fear, awe, even anger were acceptable. Proof he was inside your head. But her quiet was a locked door he couldn't pick. Yo, Liz, he called, exaggerating the nickname. Can we get those drinks faster today? My people are thirsty. A few students snorted. Elizabeth slid a tray onto the counter, wiped the surface clean, and met his gaze like a level. No heat, no apology. He felt something tip inside him anyway. Jealousy, maybe, green around the edges. She doesn't play, and they're watching her not play. Between mid-rounds, he scrolled his notifications. A brand rep had messaged at 6:02 a.m. Keep it clean, Michael. We're monitoring replies. Another wrote, Fun clip. Maybe a follow-up, family-friendly. He imagined a pleasant, contrite video, him bringing the cafe staff flowers, hugging the waitress, doing a respect speech. It would steady the ship. But the thought of asking her for a bit made his teeth grind. He pictured her watching him, seeing through him. No, she doesn't get to see me ask. Hydrate break, he yelled, then sauntered to the cafe and tipped his water bottle so it sloshed across the counter, a glittering sheet pouring onto the mats. Oops, he said, wide-eyed. Cleanup on aisle coach is clumsy. A couple of guys laughed too loudly. Elizabeth grabbed towels. She didn't argue, didn't sigh, just folded the mess into neat squares of cotton and carried the wet to a bin. When she turned, Michael was already performing for phones. See that response time, he announced. Elite. Coach Delgado watched from the heavy bags, jaw working on the inside. When Michael passed him, Delgado's voice stayed low. You're taunting someone you don't understand. Michael didn't break stride. I understand brand, coach. Delgado's eyes cut to the cafe. You're poking a bear and telling yourself it's a kitten. He walked off before Michael could reply. The older man had that trick, dropping a sentence in your head like a nail and leaving you to step on it later. Midday brought more accidents. A shaker bottle landed just short of Elizabeth's shoes. A sleeve of paper cups rolled across her ankles. Faster, Michael said again, not even pretending it was about service anymore. Come on, speed is fitness, right? He watched her face for cracks. He wanted flinches, the way some men want applause. Nothing. She just kept putting one thing where it belonged, and the next thing where it belonged, an assembly line of refusal. By late afternoon, his followers were simmering for more. When's the rematch? 2 rounds with the barista. Teach her a lesson, coach. The comments hummed beneath every story he posted like a hive he needed to control. Fine. Control it. He cornered his assistant near the front desk. We're doing a light exhibition Saturday, he said. 24 hours notice. Post the flyer tonight. Trainer versus cafe. Settling the debate. Family vibe. I'll call it a charity spar. The assistant hesitated. With her consent? Michael's smile didn't move. It's friendly. She'll say yes. If she doesn't, we'll play it like she declined respectfully. Either way, content. Behind the counter, Elizabeth finished a cappuccino she hadn't tasted in 6 months and set it for pickup. The cafe's little bell dinged like punctuation. She'd heard every word. She kept her hands moving because if she stopped, she'd go to him right now and end the conversation with truth he didn't deserve in front of customers who wouldn't hear it. At 6, the after-work crowd swarmed. Michael turned the volume up for them. Louder pads, bigger whoops, more compliments to the paying men with day jobs and night egos. He took a selfie with a venture capitalist whom he'd never let spar beyond pitter-pat, but who looked deadly enough in a filter. Saturday, he told the camera. 2 minutes of charity. We're all about fun here. Respect. The word tasted like sugar on his tongue, too sweet, fake grit. But the little red numbers ticked upward. Sponsors would like this. He glanced toward the cafe. Elizabeth wiped the espresso wand, cleaned the drip tray, sized the cups by instinct. She was too precise, too calm. He felt again the sour jealousy of a man watching someone refuse his weather. She doesn't react. That's her trick. He needed to break that trick on camera. Near closing, Delgado approached the counter for tea. He didn't order it, just stood there until Elizabeth set the cup down like they'd practiced the exchange 100 times. He wrapped his fingers around the heat and spoke without looking at her. You don't owe him presents, he said. She blew steam away. He's not asking presents, she replied. He's asking permission. To do what? Write my story for me. Delgado nodded once, eyes still on the tea. He's planning a live stream. I heard. You want me to shut it down? No. She thought of the shoebox, the wraps, Diego's hand on her head, the order he'd given her for living. Silence, angle, accuracy. I want space. Space is expensive, Delgado said softly. He'll make noise to fill it. I can pay. He looked at her finally. Something like pride or fear moved across his face. Be careful what you pay with. When the last shake was blended and the blinds pulled halfway, Elizabeth locked the cafe door and walked out into the evening. Phoenix air held on to heat like a bet. She drove past the warehouse where the illegal fights had been, now a discount furniture store with posters for mattresses and zero interest. She parked 2 blocks from the cemetery because the lot gate squealed and she didn't want sound. Diego's grave was a flat stone with a nick on one edge where a mover had clipped it once. She knelt, pressed her palms to the cool grass, and let the day fall through her hands into the earth. Above her, The sky took the color out of things until the whites and silvers seemed to glow. "You told me not to fight angry," she said finally, voice steady. "But you never said I couldn't fight back." Wind threaded the trees as if in answer. Or maybe memory was that loud tonight. Her phone buzzed against her thigh. The flyer was up, black and red. Michael's grin. The words, "Friendly Exhibition," in a font that wanted to be a threat. Comments flared under it like sparks. "Let her cook." "She won't show." "Coach gonna body her." Respectfully, "Don't." Elizabeth exhaled. The breath didn't shake. Enough. She stood, dusted the grass from her knees, and looked at the name carved in stone like a command. "Silence," she said, the first beat. "Angle." She turned toward the road. "Accuracy." Back at Apex, the night crew mopped around heavy bags, leaving half-moons of clean floor that would be dirty again in the morning. Michael filmed one more story in front of the ring. Smile back, hands open like a priest. "Saturday," he said into the lens. "Fun. Family. Respect." He pocketed the phone and let the smile drop. The room felt wrong for a second. Too big, too empty, as if sound itself had backed away from him. "She'll show," he told himself. "And when she does, I'll make sure they remember who runs this place." In the dark of her car, Elizabeth set her phone face down on the passenger seat and drove without the radio. The city lights slid across her hands on the wheel like tape being wound. She didn't picture the clip. She didn't picture the ring. She pictured the space between them. And she smiled. Saturday came dressed like a spectacle. By noon, Apex Combat Gym pulsed like a hive. Jump ropes snapping, gloves popping, phones ready. The Friendly Exhibition banner hung over the cage, black letters glossy against white vinyl. Michael Cooper strutted across the mat like a ringmaster who'd sold out the show. Elizabeth parked in her usual spot, 10 minutes early, apron folded on her lap before she even stepped out of the car. She knew he'd do this. He was addicted to audience. What she didn't expect was the number of them. The entire gym had become a stage, music pounding, students stretching, spectators lining the walls like eager witnesses to something cruel disguised as fun. Inside, Michael was mid-performance. "You all know I'm about teaching humility," he said into his phone camera, voice smooth with fake benevolence. "So today, we're keeping it light, respectful. 2 minutes, just for laughs." His followers poured hearts into the live stream. Then he turned. "Oh, there's our guest of honor." Every head tilted toward the cafe. Elizabeth stood behind the counter, tray in hand, eyes steady. "Come on, waitress," Michael called, spreading his arms wide. "Step into the ring. Show us how not to throw a punch." The crowd whistled. Someone yelled, "She's got this," in mock encouragement. The air buzzed with that uneasy laughter people use to hide discomfort. Elizabeth didn't move, not yet. For 5 long seconds, she simply looked at him. Then she set the tray down, gently. No words, no eye roll, just motion. Deliberate, slow, dangerous in its control. She untied her apron, folded it twice, and laid it neatly on the counter. The room hushed without meaning to. Michael grinned, mistaking composure for surrender. "Hey, relax, no pressure," he said, pacing like a predator who thought the hunt was guaranteed. "It's for charity, right? Show the camera your smile." Elizabeth stepped from behind the counter. Her sneakers squeaked once against the polished floor. Delgado, from the far side of the gym, straightened. The old coach's hands curled around his towel, white against brown knuckles. Beside him, an assistant leaned close. "Coach, should I—" "Don't," Delgado murmured. "She's about to teach him something that's not in his manuals." Elizabeth climbed between the ropes, as if the ring had been waiting for her all along. Michael tossed her a pair of 14-ounce gloves with theatrical flair. "I'll take it easy," he said. "Wouldn't want to break the help." She caught them one-handed, inspected the straps, and shook her head. "No need." Laughter rippled through the crowd. She crouched beside her bag, not the gym's, hers, and unzipped it. Inside lay her old Muay Thai wraps, worn soft by years and ghosts. She lifted them like relics, started winding them with the calm precision of someone sewing a wound closed. Michael blinked. "You brought your own gear?" "Habit," she said quietly, looping the cloth over her thumb and across her wrist. Phones were up now, angles everywhere. The feed number on Michael's live jumped by the second. "All right," he said, bouncing on his toes, feeding his audience. $100 says she doesn't last 30 seconds. The laughter came easy this time. Someone took him up on it, bills flashing. Delgado didn't laugh. He leaned toward the assistant and muttered, "She won't need 30. Michael circled, arms loose, showboating. "We'll just move around a bit," he said loudly. "No need to—" "Bell!" someone shouted from the timekeeper's table. A sharp metallic clang split the air. Elizabeth exhaled once, everything inside her sharpening to stillness. Michael charged, but she wasn't there when he reached the spot where he thought she'd be. The crowd's noise faded to heartbeat. The camera lights burned brighter. Delgado's lips moved soundlessly. Counting. 1, 2. Elizabeth stepped sideways, body aligned like geometry. Every breath balanced between memory and choice. Michael threw a testing jab, wide and arrogant. She didn't flinch, just watched. When he laughed, she saw the gap open. His habit of dropping the right hand between jokes. It was there in his clips, in his ego, in the way he believed no one beneath him could notice. Elizabeth noticed. "Don't fight angry," Diego's voice whispered through her like breath through gauze. "Fight accurate." She pivoted once, letting her back heel kiss the mat. The crowd leaned forward, phones trembling to catch the frame. Michael saw the movement and smirked. "Easy, sweetheart. No one's—" The bell rang again. Round 1. The last sound before everything changed. The bell's ring hung in the rafters like a coin spinning on edge. Michael slid in hard, left foot loud, right shoulder loaded. His grin returned for the camera, just enough teeth to say this was easy. Elizabeth's eyes were steady lines. She didn't blink. She didn't bounce. She let him enter the space she'd drawn for him, and then, angle. She wasn't there. 04. He stabbed a jab. It chased her shadow. She pivoted on the ball of her back foot, heel whispering across canvas, torso turning the way door hinges turn when they've just been oiled. His glove cut air where her cheek had been. 07. Breath in. 4 counts. Stillness. 10. Michael pumped another jab, wider this time, a show for the phones. He expected a flinch, a flurry, a retreat. Elizabeth gave him geometry instead. Slip left. Shoulders compact. She looked, for a half second, like she was listening to something he couldn't hear. 13. He swung a right hand too early, told on by his hips. She watched the shoulder, not the glove. Weight transfer telegraphed the punch like a headline. She stepped outside it, with a half-arc that left him punching emptiness and left his ribs open like a door he forgot to lock. Part 16. Elizabeth's palm came up from the floor through her core to her hand. No wind-up, no anger, just intention. She placed the strike on the soft target under his sternum. It wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. Thap. Michael's eyes widened before his breath did. 18. Sound arrived late. A small collective "oh" from the left side. A muffled curse near the timekeeper. Someone's phone shook in their hands and turned the clip vertical by accident. Chapter 21. Michael masked the flinch with a laugh that sounded like it had to climb a fence. "Cute," he said, backing a half step, then another. He rolled his shoulders like he could fling the ache out. Elizabeth didn't pursue. Fighters chase. Hunters wait. Chapter 25. He forced a bounce into his legs. Anger lifted his chin and loosened his guard. The exact opposite of what training teaches. The exact mirror of what ego does. He feinted a jab, then whipped a hook at head height, committing shoulder, pride, and the weekend's rent. Chapter 28. Elizabeth took a breath, 4 counts, and let his hook pass like a storm cloud that refuses to rain. Her rear heel marked the canvas with a tiny half-moon. Silence. Angle. 31. He reset ugly. That's when she saw it. The drop. Between beat and breath, his right hand fell below cheekbone because his lungs were bargaining with pain. She didn't strike yet. Accuracy doesn't rush. Chapter 34. "Move your head!" Somebody from the far bags shouted at Michael, a plea that sounded like a prayer. He obliged, forward, bad choice. He crashed into the pocket with a pawing jab that asked for distance but begged for contact. Elizabeth answered both. Her left forearm framed, her right hand skimmed to check range. Her feet made the smallest L on the mat. Then turn on the axis, hip, spine, shoulder, elbow. 39. The left elbow rose like a sunrise and landed like a closing door under his jaw. There was no wind-up, no drum roll, just the clean click of technique meeting target. Tok. Silence, real silence, came first. The kind that erases gym music and turns shoes into ghosts. Michael's knees forgot the plan. His mouthguard thought about gravity and chose it. Eyes blinked, yes, no, then came back with no answer. 43. He fell like a man whose strings had been cut. Not dramatic, not ugly, just complete. A toppled statue. Mid-ring. No one breathed. Phones did. They captured everything. 47. Elizabeth didn't look triumphant. She didn't even look relieved. She stepped back exactly 2 paces and let her hands settle near her collarbones as if cooling a stove. Her chest rose and fell like it belonged to somebody who'd walked upstairs. Not ended a career. 50. Delgado was already halfway across the mat, towel forgotten on the floor behind him. He knelt and tilted Michael's head. 2 fingers at the neck, thumb at the jaw. "Talk to me," he said softly. "Eyes on me. There you go." Chapter 50. Michael's pupils crawled back from wherever they'd gone. "Fine," he mumbled around saliva and shock. He tried to sit. His body voted no. The crowd's first sound returned as a tide rolling in slow. Gasps, whispers, the word holy, repeated like a chant. 55. Elizabeth unhooked the wrap tail from her glove with her teeth. the way she'd done 1,000 times before the promise. She teased the knot loose, then wound the fabric off her fist, one smooth spiral at a time, as if undoing a spell. Chapter 58. Someone yelled the time at the clock. 58! The number stuck to the air like a sticker. Phones captured it too. Chapter 60. Life slammed back into the building. People burst into noise they hadn't had permission to make. Shouts, laughter, the rising metallic chatter of, "Did you see?" And, "No, you don't understand." And, I got it. I got it." A shaker bottle hit the floor. A stool skidded. The live stream comments detonated. Delgado glanced up once at Elizabeth. Something in his face said, "Thank you," and "I'm sorry," and "I knew" all at once. Then he adjusted Michael's posture and pressed cold pack to swelling jaw. "Stay down," he said, calm as weather. "Breathe, slow." Elizabeth stepped to the center line and stopped. She didn't raise a hand. She didn't bow. Her voice reached Michael first, not the crowd. "Are you done now?" It wasn't a taunt. It was a question about stories and the right to finish them. He tried to answer. What came out was air. "Coach, he good?" a student asked, half terrified, half amazed. "He's awake," Delgado said. "Jaw's going to hate him for a week." The timekeeper fumbled with the bell and hit it out of habit. The ring sounded small, almost embarrassed. Elizabeth walked to the ropes and ducked under. The world rushed to meet her. 3 people at once with phones, a 4th with a mic that smelled like someone else's breath. Name? Background? How long have you been training? Was this planned? She passed through them like rain through wire. At the apron she sat, peeled the second wrap away, and rolled both into neat coins of cloth. She tucked them into her bag, zipped it, and stood. The crowd parted for her without knowing why. On the mat, Michael pushed up to an elbow and instantly regretted the ambition. Delgado's hand on his shoulder was gentle and unarguable. Not yet. He looked past the coach, eyes finding Elizabeth as if drawn by grievance, habit, gravity. He didn't know. She was already moving away, not triumphant, not fleeing, just finished. "Elizabeth," Delgado called, not loud, but the gym quieted for it anyway. She paused. He nodded once. Nothing else. She returned the nod and kept walking. Behind her, chaos found its rhythm. People laughed too loud, like they were trying to convince themselves they'd always believed this would happen. Others went quiet, in that peculiar way you do when a story rearranges your furniture. Near the front desk, the assistant stared at his phone. "It's up," he whispered to nobody. "It's already up." A kid with a cracked screen had posted the cleanest angle with a 6-word caption. 2 hits. Respect and reality. Views multiplied like bacteria in heat. Another account clipped the elbow in slow motion with a halo effect. A third cut Michael's pre-bout bet into the knockdown like a comedy edit. Elizabeth reached the cafe counter, lifted her neatly folded apron, and set it back where it had been that first day. Centered, squared, unwrinkled. She slipped the loop over her head, tied the strap, and faced the room like it was any other Saturday. In the ring, Michael breathed through a straw of air and blinked against the bright. "I'm fine," he said again, too loud to the wrong person. It sounded like a man trying to convince a mirror. Delgado didn't answer. He was looking at the doorway where Elizabeth had disappeared, at the space she left that felt larger than before. Across the gym, the live stream ticked past 50,000, then 100. The clip leapt to a sports meme page. Someone added a timestamp overlay. 58. Someone else added a caption. Are you done now? Before Elizabeth could wash her hands, her phone buzzed with a notification that would change the week, the month, the shape of the gym. Someone had uploaded the footage before she even left the ring. The notification didn't ping, it roared. Elizabeth's phone lit up behind the cafe counter like a small lighthouse, one alert chasing the next, until they stacked into a bright white wall. Mentions, tags, reposts, 100 new followers, then 1,000. Then numbers that didn't feel real. Someone had clipped the elbow from 3 angles, lined them up like a triptych, and added the ticker, V8, in the corner. Another account looped her line, "Are you done now?" over a bass drop and called it a hymn. Outside the ropes, Apex sounded like a marketplace, laughter like coins, the "Oh my God" chorus. People who had seen it with their eyes were now rewatching it with their screens, hunting for proof of magic. Elizabeth tied her apron as if the knot held the room together. "Liz," the front desk assistant panted, jogging up with his phone, "You're trending." She kept her voice level. "For what?" "For reality," he said, equal parts awed and terrified. By evening, the headline traveled farther than the gym's walls. Waitress knocks out MMA trainer in 60 seconds. The big sports meme page tagged the smaller ones. The smaller ones tagged talk shows. Blue checks pinged each other like sonar. A podcast host paused a segment to watch the clip live. A retired fighter stitched it with a quiet nod and the caption, "Textbook elbow. Breathe and learn." In the ring, Michael forced a light drill with a paying client and smiled like his jaw didn't ache. The live camera tried to love him as much as it had yesterday. It didn't. The comments turned from hearts to question marks to knives. Staged. He let her. Bro got folded. Respect to her. He ended the stream early and paced the office until the walls felt like an insult. A sponsorship manager left a message that said nothing and meant everything. "We'll revisit when the conversation stabilizes." Another wrote, "We're pivoting to new ambassadors this quarter." He stared at the ceiling tile he'd kicked up years ago and imagined it falling on his face. Control the room, he thought. Reframe. Rewrite. By morning, Elizabeth had 3 voicemails from national shows and 2 from local news. The last one tried philosophy. What does "are you done now" mean? She poured coffee into paper cups and answered none. When a reporter pushed through the crowd with a mic wrapped in a foam cube and said, "Just a quote?" Elizabeth wiped a clean circle on the counter and gave her one. "It was never about winning," she said. "It was about stopping him." The reporter blinked, waiting for more. That was all. It was enough for a lower third graphic. Elizabeth Chavez speaks. Michael watched the segment from his phone with the volume down. He zoomed on Elizabeth's expression, a calm that refused to sell the aftermath, and felt jealousy land in his throat like a stone. He could sing, shout, posture. She could whisper and take the air. "Crisis plan," he told the mirror. "Let's go." He posted a video in a gray hoodie, light soft, tone soft. He called it a misunderstanding. He said he'd never endanger staff. He said the spar was playful. He said the knockdown was a prank gone wrong, then an angle for content, then just a joke. He said Elizabeth attacked after he lowered intensity. He talked long enough to change his own story twice. The comments noticed. He's rewriting in real time. Playful? The elbow wasn't. If it was a prank, why's your jaw iced? He deleted and reposted with a caption about forgiveness. The algorithm remembered the first draft. Across town, Delgado unlocked an old hard drive with the slowness of someone disarming his own past. Years of security clips, backed up because institutions forget the things they should remember. He scrubbed through footage where Michael joked with a janitor until the man left, where a receptionist cried quietly after a funny nickname, where Elizabeth wiped a spill Michael accidentally poured. He didn't want to hurt the gym, he wanted to tell the truth. Sometimes those are the same thing. That night, a burner account posted the first clip. Michael tossing a shaker bottle too close to Elizabeth's shoes, then laughing into a camera about reflexes. The caption was gentle and surgical. Patterns are louder than apologies. The second clip showed him cornering a teenage student about weight while a parent looked away. The third was audio, Michael's voice near the heavy bags, a tone that smiled and cut at once. Know your lane. The gym split along the cut. Some of the affluent regulars closed ranks, calling it out of context. Younger fighters shared the clips with disgust. The desk staff stopped smiling when Michael walked through. A quiet committee formed in the break room without a name. People who had seen, people who had endured, people who were done. Elizabeth kept working. She accepted cash, counted change, cleaned the machine that screamed at milk. Strangers asked for selfies. She said no to everyone. When someone tried to hand her a bouquet across the counter, she leaned back from the flowers like they were a camera. At noon, the podcast with the retired champion did a full segment. He watched the fight frame by frame and said things that sounded like scripture to people who know. No rage, no rush, perfect pocket management. Respect to Ms. Chavez. Respect to Coach Delgado for checking the downed fighter. A brand announced they were pausing their partnership with Michael. Another called it a values misalignment. The word misalignment hurt worse than cancelled. Misalignment meant you were wrong all along. Late afternoon, Elizabeth's co-workers called her to the cafe door. They'd taped butcher paper over the glass and written "closed for 10" with a Sharpie. Inside, the blender sat quiet like a sleeping dog. On the counter, a thin frame leaned against the espresso machine, wrapped in brown paper with twine. "Open it," the front desk assistant said, bouncing on his heels. She undid the knot and peeled back the paper. Inside, a printout of the headline in neat serif type. The quiet knockout. Beneath it, 3 stills, her palm to the body, her elbow under the chin, her face afterward, unmoved. "We chipped in," the barista said, cheeks pink. "It's for the cafe wall. Or your wall, if you want." Elizabeth's throat went tight the way it does when grief and gratitude stand too close together. "Thank you," she managed. "You saved us a little," the desk kid blurted, "even if it doesn't feel like it." She looked down so the tears wouldn't have an audience, then up so the people would. "Don't say saved," she said. "Say stopped. For now." They nodded. It was enough. When the 10 minutes ended, the gym resumed its loud pretending, but the sound had new edges. A man by the kettlebells argued with his friend about due process. Another, lacing gloves, whispered that he was quitting. A woman in the corner messaged 3 others and started a group chat called "We're Not Crazy." The banner over the cage still read "Discipline, Dominance, Results." Somebody had stuck a post-it on the D word. It said, "Respect." That evening, Michael filmed a live from his car. He tried quiet dignity. He tried outrage. He tried a laugh. The numbers dipped. The comments did not. Apologize to her. Apologize to all of them. You're done. He threw the phone onto the passenger seat and swore at traffic that wasn't there. Elizabeth closed the cafe with muscle memory. Wipe, rinse, stack, flip the sign. Her phone vibrated one last time before she killed the sound. A message from a number she didn't know. Your line saved my daughter from a bully today. She said, "Are you done now?" and walked away. Thank you. Elizabeth rested her forehead against the cool glass of the door and let herself smile where no one could turn it into content. Outside, the night was a camera that couldn't record. Inside, the gym was learning a new noise, the sound a story makes when it stops belonging to the person who kept telling it wrong. Morning arrived, mean and fluorescent. Elizabeth unlocked the cafe in the gray hour and found the gym TVs already tuned to a studio smile. Michael Cooper sat under soft lights in a neck brace, the color of surrender. The Chiron. Exclusive, trainer speaks out. He told the host he'd been blindsided, that he'd lowered intensity, that he feared for his safety, that he'd filed assault charges to protect other staff. He blinked slow. A wounded animal rehearsed for sympathy. Elizabeth rinsed the portafilter. The water hissed like it had an opinion. The interview cut to the clip, blurry, slowed, without the sound of breath and choice. The host tilted her head. Did she attack you? Michael swallowed on camera, practiced. I think she wanted to hurt me. A commercial for vitamins followed, as if health were a straight line you could swallow. By 9, papers had the filing. By 10, booking emails cooled. Sponsors used legal words that sounded like snow. Pending, review, compliance. Michael went live again from his car, neck brace removed, anger bare. We're not canceling me over a prank, he said. We're not letting a barista dictate combat sports culture. He had picked the wrong noun again. The social feeds went courtroom. Evidence threads braided themselves together. Date stamps, gym schedules, video angles, testimony. Delgado posted from the gym's ancient account. No filters, no polish, just his weathered face and a caption, Patterns Matter. Then he uploaded 3 minutes of raw footage. Michael tipping a bottle over the cafe counter. Michael cornering a teenage boy into a weight confession. Michael accidentally shoulder-checking a janitor. No music. No cutaways. The quiet made the blows louder. Former employees surfaced with DM screenshots and time cards marked with emergency cleaning during peak hours. 2 parents wrote about coaching that sounded like control. A receptionist posted an email where Michael called her Sunshine after writing her up for being 5 minutes late due to a bus delay. The comments did what juries do when the story stops arguing with them. They agreed. Elizabeth brewed coffee like the world wasn't on fire. When someone asked for a quote over the counter, she shook her head. When someone else asked if she'd sue him into the ground, she said, I have work. At lunch, Delgado knocked once on the cafe door, came in and poured his own tea. He looked older than yesterday by a season. I spoke to a lawyer, he said. I didn't ask, she replied. You don't have to. He's trying to pull you into the mud. We'll keep you clean. She nodded, grateful and stubborn. Her phone throbbed on the counter with messages she didn't open. Then a text from a number she recognized, one of the young women who trained at odd hours. Thank you for the quiet. I didn't know it could be armor. Another. If you speak, we'll follow. Another. I'm scared, but I'm less scared now. Fear makes a choir when it finds harmony. By mid-afternoon, a hashtag had picked up from a comment and turned into a banner. Respect the quiet, spread across timelines like a white flag nailed to a mast. Women posted videos without faces, sraripast, unet hands that had scrubbed mats and wiped counters and taped wrists. Men shared apologies with no names attached. A famous lightweight stitched Elizabeth's elbow with this caption: "Respect isn't volume, it's timing." At 3, Elizabeth finally stood in front of a wall and recorded one message because the silence needed a sentence to lean on. No intro, no outro. Standing frame, apron still on, eyes steady. Respect isn't a belt you wear. It's how you treat the people who clean your ring. She hit post and turned her phone face down again. The line went everywhere. Middle schoolers wrote it on notebook covers. A dance team used it as a title card. A women's shelter put it on a flyer. The sentence wasn't fancy. It just told the truth out loud. In the ring area, Michael tried one more live. The comments slid from denial to demand. Apologize directly. Drop the charges. Step away. Pay them. Pay her. He threw the phone at a heavy bag and missed. It skittered under the bleachers like a rat. He clawed it out with a curse, thumbed furiously at the screen, unfollow, block, delete, repost, small spells against a tide. Then came the statement from a sponsor he'd banked on. No legal snow, just summer heat. We stand with gym staff and fighters who model dignity. We will not work with Michael Cooper. 3 more followed. A parent canceled a youth program. 2 clients asked for refunds. The landlord called about brand issues. Michael leaned on the office desk until the laminate groaned. That evening, Delgado held a meeting on the mats. No mics, no cameras, staff only. The room smelled like lemon cleaner and nerves. He stood with his hands in his pockets like he had nothing to sell. "I'm retiring," he said simply. "I should have a year ago. My knees know, my back knows. My wife knows." A soft ripple of laughter broke the tight air. He nodded toward the cafe window. "I'm buying out my share of Apex's old equipment, and I'm signing the rest of my stake over. To Elizabeth." Heads snapped toward her. She blinked like he'd said her name in another language. "No," she said automatically, palms raised. "Coach, no." Delgado's mouth went rueful. "You'll do right by it?" "I won't do it at all," she said, voice steady. "This ring already has his name soaked into the floorboards. I'm not repainting rot." She felt every eye and kept talking anyway. "I want something that never had him in it. New mats, new walls, new rules." A silence fell that wasn't empty. It was respectful space being cleared. After the meeting, in the hallway that had heard too many apologies, Delgado leaned against the cinder block and smiled at her like a father who trusted the road, even if it scared him. "Then you build," he said. "I'll help you move the first bag." Michael watched from the office window, eyes rimmed red, neck brace on the desk, a legal pad in his hands with a plan that turned to static before his pen could spell it. The gym he had curated like a feed was posting a different story without asking him for a caption. The next day, the DA's office confirmed what the internet had already deduced. The assault charges were being reviewed in light of new evidence. A local reporter read the phrase on air with a tone you reserve for overdue corrections. Elizabeth reopened the cafe at 7 sharp. A line had formed not for smoothies but for a moment. people wanting to say things before they lost the nerve. She took cash, poured coffee, nodded when nods were all someone had to give. A teenage boy approached with his mother and placed a folded note on the counter. He made me weigh in without my shirt. I thought that was just how it was. It isn't, right? She slid the note back to him with 2 words written underneath. It isn't. By noon, respect the quiet was on a billboard downtown because a woman who worked in marketing and had loved Muay Thai once decided her budget could buy a sentence where everyone would see it. At 3, Michael's attorney held a press conference no one wanted, reading words that sounded like medicine you take after the sickness left. At 5, a final email from the last sponsor. No ambiguity, no meeting invite, just a subject line. Termination. The body was 1 sentence longer than the subject line and hurt more. That night, Elizabeth closed early without being asked. She placed a handwritten sign on the glass. Back in an hour. Or a year. Building something new. People took photos. The internet argued about whether it was a metaphor or a notice. She ignored both. She drove to the old neighborhood where the Chavez gym used to breathe and parked in front of a dark warehouse with a for-lease sign crooked in the wind. She stood in the doorway and looked at the square of shadowed floor that might one day hold other people's fear until it softened into discipline. Her phone vibrated with another message she didn't expect, from a donor she'd never met. If you're building, I'm in. Then another, and another, then a text from Delgado. I found a space with high ceilings and cheap rent. You'll hate the bathrooms. You'll love the light. Elizabeth rested her palm against the cold metal door like she was measuring its heartbeat. Respect, she said, testing the word in the empty street. It didn't echo. It stayed. She smiled at that. Tomorrow would bring leases and forms and permits and paint. Tonight, she let herself imagine a wall with a sentence painted big enough to stop a first step before it goes wrong. Respect isn't a belt you wear. It's how you treat the people who clean your ring. She put the key the landlord had loaned her into the lock and turned it once, just to hear the sound. Then she closed the door gently, the way she closed the shoebox, and walked back to the car. No crown, no ring, no throne. Something better, space. 1 year later, the key turned and sang the same clean note it had the first time. Elizabeth Chavez pushed open the glass door and let the morning in. White and gold, peace and power. The floors gleamed without boasting. The air smelled like lemon and fresh canvas, not old sweat. A brass plate by the threshold read, "The Hammer Foundation," in a simple font that didn't need to flex. Just inside, on a white wall, her sentence lived tall enough to stop a bad habit mid-step. Silence isn't weakness, it's control. The letters cast soft shadows like they were holding their own breath. Lights came up in 2 rows and warmed the space. Delgado's radio, permanently tuned between stations, hissed and then found a song that could pass for a heartbeat. Elizabeth smiled at the imperfection and crossed the mat, fingertips brushing ropes that didn't remember anyone else's name. The mural covered the north wall, Diego at 22, grinning with the chipped tooth that had become a family legend. The artist had caught his posture just right, chin tucked, shoulders easy, weight already turning for the angle. Under his painted elbow, in gold script, patience before precision. They had made a rule about photos in front of that mural. No selfies taken mid-cry, no performative grief. You could touch the wall if you needed to. People did, and then they trained. The day unfolded like a tape wrap, tight, neat, Ritual. Montage. A teenage girl, 15, stubborn, hair braided tight, stood in front of a mirror practice station and flinched at her own feints. Elizabeth stepped beside her and matched her breath. "Block isn't fear," she said softly. "It's choice." They drilled the first defensive shell, forearms knit, elbows a door frame, chin behind the hinge. When the girl's guard finally felt like a room and not a panic, she looked up, surprised at her own quiet. "You did that," Elizabeth told her. The girl nodded once, shy and fierce. A mother lingered after the morning fundamentals class, while students rolled up bands and wiped down their squares. She hovered near the exit until the room emptied and then approached, hands wringing a towel into a ribbon. She started, then only breathed. Elizabeth waited. Silence worked like a chair pulled out. Finally, "Thank you." A whisper. The mother pressed a palm to her sternum as if the words had weight. "He doesn't raise his voice anymore. Not since I learned how not to shrink." Elizabeth didn't say, "You saved yourself." She just nodded and hugged her, not the social media kind, the long, steady kind that says you're not imaginary. A man in a work shirt with a stitched name patch, 30s, shoulders tight like he was used to apologizing for having them, watched from the doorway for a week before he stepped onto the mat. Delgado took him for the basics himself, hands gentle as he adjusted the man's stance. "This part isn't for the cameras," Delgado said, voice old gravel made warm. "It's just for your spine." Delgado's whistle still trilled the same two-note pattern it had at the old gym, but it floated differently here. He wore a staff shirt with foul lead coach, printed in small gold letters over his heart, and looked like he had sneaked into someone else's youth. "We're not fast," he told a room of beginners one Thursday night. "We're right, and then we're fast." When he moved, the years forgot him for a minute at a time. A laminated card by the sign-in desk listed the rules, plain and bright. Sliding scale fees. If you can't pay, you still train. No humiliation. Ever. No live streams without consent. No volume competitions. No weaponized compliments. Respect the cleaners. They were named on the board like champions. The old kettlebells from Apex, sanded down and repainted gold, lived in a corner like adopted dogs who'd found a good home. The heavy bag from the warehouse fight hung in a far bay, wrapped twice at the mount, and treated like a memorial. Students touched it before hard rounds, not for luck, for memory. Midday sun spilled through skylights and made lines of light across the mat. Class turned, teenagers out, lunch crew in, nurses on break, a chef between shifts, a pair of construction workers who always partnered and counted reps in Spanish. Elizabeth floated between them with a coach's eye and a waitress's instinct for refills, water, confidence, small corrections given where they would land softly enough to change someone's day. Between sessions, she found a moment under Diego's painted smile and checked the donation board. Names written in chalk, some in block letters, some in quick cursive. Anonymity allowed and often chosen. A girl had added a doodled crown to the top corner with no caption. The crown didn't sit on anyone's head. It just existed. A sketch of power not worn by a person, but by the place. They didn't post much. A monthly clip, maybe. Always after asking. Always about form. Never about spectacle. The internet had already given them a gift and taken its tax. The foundation learned to use only what it could keep. At 3, a package arrived. A framed print with a note tucked behind the glass. Inside, the headline that had been taped to the cafe a lifetime ago. The Quiet Knockout. Beneath it, 3 stills again, but this time the sender had added a 4th. Elizabeth wiping the cafe counter afterward, apron looped over her neck, the shape of a woman not repositioned by fame. The note on the back read, "Went viral for a minute. Needed to live somewhere for longer. A friend you taught from far away." She hung it near the entrance, beneath her own sentence. When parents asked, she told them the same thing. It's not about beating someone, it's about not becoming them. Evening class thickened with heat and purpose. Delgado taught clinch entries with the patience of someone untangling a necklace. Elizabeth walked the line, tapping shoulders into shape. When a new student tried to rip power from nowhere, she stepped in and offered a correction with a palm, not a finger. "Less noise," she said. "More aim." The last student left laughing with classmates they wouldn't have spoken to 6 months ago. The door latched and the building exhaled. Elizabeth did the closing check herself. Ropes slack but even, bags swinging to still, whiteboards wiped, golden kettlebells parked like compliant planets. Locker room lights clicked to night mode. She left the front lamps off. Dawn would carry its own. The ring waited in the half-light. She slid under the first rope and sat on the apron with her feet on the mat like she had as a girl. Outside and inside at once. The tape roll kissed her palm with the tiny weight of ceremony. She wrapped her left hand slow, spine tall, breath steady, each loop a sentence she'd learned to write on muscle. Silence. Angle. Accuracy. In the stillness, the city made small noises. Truck brakes grumbling 2 streets over. A neighbor's laugh bouncing off brick. A stray dog deciding not to bark. The mural watched without judging. Delgado's radio finally gave up and hummed itself to sleep. Elizabeth stood and faced the empty space the way some people face a morning sky. It faced back like a lake that kept secrets well. Not for glory, not for revenge. For the promise. She lifted her hands to cheekbone height, elbows quiet, chin tucked. A shadow on the opposite rope mirrored her and then vanished when she exhaled, like worry leaving before it got to stay. "Ready?" she asked the room, the year, the next kid who would walk through the door and pretend not to be scared. The room was ready. She sat again, unwrapped with the same care she'd wrapped. Rolled the tape, set it on the stool. White and gold. Peace and power. The wall said what it needed to for anyone who might forget. She turned off the last light and stood at the doorway a heartbeat longer than necessary, listening to the kind of quiet she'd fought for. The street was gray-blue, a clean canvas disguised as morning. The door closed behind her with a soft, certain click. The quiet ones aren't weak. They're just waiting for the right time to swing.